Welcome to the Deep Dive. We cut through the noise, examine the source material, and, well, we hand you the insights you need to be truly well-informed. Today, we're tackling two really big ideas, concepts that sort of define human maturity: discipline and joy.
That's right. And our source material today is a fascinating reflection on some core spiritual texts. We're drawing heavily from Hebrews chapter 12 on correction and also Proverbs chapter 17 on the nature of happiness.
Okay, so what's the mission here?
Well, the mission is pretty vital, actually. We're going to try and unpack this tough paradox, the idea that pain or discipline can actually be a sign of love. And importantly, we want to draw a clear line between that sort of superficial satisfaction, the kind that disappears quickly, and authentic, lasting joy, the kind that really nourishes the spirit.
Right. It sounds like a deep dive into what it takes not just to get by, but to really thrive, especially when things, well, when they get tough. Let's jump right in, and maybe with the challenging part first. Discipline. Our sources focus on Hebrews 12.1m, which notes the stark reality that no discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful.
Painful. And the reflection uses this really potent, almost visceral word for that immediate pain. It translates to something like, ugly bitter.
The ugly bitter one.
Yeah, and that feeling is absolutely central to the analysis here. The material insists we have to first acknowledge that correction. Well, it hurts.
That ugly bitter feeling. Yeah, that captures exactly why we resist it, doesn't it? We naturally shy away from that pain, whether it's getting a tough critique at work or maybe having a financial boundary enforced or, like in the scriptural context, getting instruction from a higher authority.
Absolutely. But here's where the source material immediately challenges, a basic assumption we might have. It pushes back really hard against the idea that discipline just equals punishment. The reflection argues that the pain, and even describe it as causing pain in the heart of the parents, that pain is actually proof of love. It's an investment, of energy and care, not just a judgment.
So the idea is, if giving the correction is painful for the person giving it, it's more likely coming from a place of love. But I have to ask the question I think our listener might be thinking: how do you, on the receiving end, tell the difference?
Okay.
How do you distinguish that necessary loving correction from pain caused by, say, frustration or anger or even just instability from the authority figure? Is the pain always good?
That's a really crucial question, and the material doesn't ignore the risk of, bad delivery. The defining factor, according to this analysis, seems to be the intent and the fruit, what comes out of it. True, loving discipline, unlike just reactive punishment, it's always looking forward. Its goal is transformation, right? Not just paying someone back for a past mistake. So if the correction encourages you towards good habits, if it's anchored in clear standards and not just like an emotional impulse, that's the evidence of its beneficial intent.
Okay, that makes sense. Intent and fruit. So if we accept this bitter pill, what are the specific outcomes? The analysis promises 3 transformative ones, right?
Yes, 3 key benefits. The first one is really about concrete action. The discipline yields a harvest of righteousness and peace. Now, if you strip away the specialized language there, it basically means the correction guides you back towards doing what's right. It stops you from repeating the error, and that lays the groundwork for peace in your life. It's about corrective action.
Right, corrective action.
Yeah.
Okay, the second benefit seems more focused on relationships and maybe your internal state.
Exactly. It creates harmony, and it replaces rebellion. And this isn't just about, making nice with the person in charge. It's also about internal reconciliation. Discipline helps stop that internal war that happens when you kind of know you're doing something wrong but keep doing it. When you accept the boundary, you stop fighting the reality of your situation. And that can lead to a profound sense of inner peace.
Inner peace. And the third benefit, that moves from habits and internal peace towards what? Sustained growth.
It promotes what the sources call spiritual exercises. And this is maybe the most universally applicable insight, I think. If we translate this beyond just, say, scripture reading and prayer, it means cultivating a self-awareness and intentional habits, like really focusing. The correction basically forces you to replace that mental or physical laziness with active self-improvement. Things like meditation, journaling, focus training, whatever it is in your field, it's the active response to the pain.
I like that translation, intentional habits. It really shifts the whole thing from just passively taking it to actively training yourself. And this brings us back to that powerful coach analogy the analysis uses.
Yes, the coach analogy is key here because it clarifies the difference between instruction and, shame. A good coach doesn't criticize you as a person. They critique your form, your performance. The sources explicitly say the directive is practical. Lift your hands, strengthen your knees, replace laziness with correct directives. It's operational advice. You're being told what to do, not fundamentally who you are.
That difference is so crucial for actually accepting difficult truth, isn't it? If I feel attacked as a person, my defenses go straight up. But if I feel like I'm getting instruction on improving my technique, well, I can probably take the pain because there's a promise of future success.
Yeah.
So the right response to this ugly, bitter correction shouldn't be despair or contempt. Those are the two pitfalls mentioned, but maybe proactive submission. Using the pain for self-training, moving towards maturity.
Exactly. It's presented as a path that yields deep, enduring peace. And that harvest of peace leads us right into our second major theme, the huge difference between that quick-fix happiness and real, lasting joy.
Right. The source material uses Proverbs 17.22 as the starting point. A joyful heart is good medicine, but a broken spirit dries up the bones. And this is where the material gives us that really phenomenal, very contemporary contrast from Taiwan.
Yes, they lay out two scenes from modern life there, and they perfectly illustrate the distinction between temporary happiness and true joy. You can think of it as like a cultural mirror showing where we often look for fulfillment.
Okay, give us the Taichung scene first. That sounds like the classic example of fleeting satisfaction.
Right, so in Taichung, that's a big, bustling city in western Taiwan. The source describes people literally weeping with excitement. Why? Because the Starlight Mitsukoshi department store was finally reopening after being closed for 7 months. This intense emotional reaction, actual tears. It's tied entirely to consumption, to novelty, to getting validation through spending money. It's the perfect picture of transient, consumption-based happiness, a rush, a quick fix.
A burst of retail euphoria, yeah. And that kind of euphoria, it has to be temporary, right? Because the external thing, the store opening, the new purchase, it always fades. So what was the contrasting scene?
So you go to the other side of the island, Hualien, in eastern Taiwan. This area had recently suffered severe flooding. And here you see volunteers, they're sweating, they're digging with shovels, helping complete strangers recover their homes from all the wreckage. These people, covered in mud, working hard, they were described as finding deep fulfillment, finding true joy in service, right in the middle of serious distress.
Wow, that is an incredibly sharp contrast. One group crying over getting access to goods, the other sweating over giving help. So the material is basically arguing that true joy is something you produce maybe through service or discipline, while happiness is something you just consume.
That really is the core of the analysis. Happiness relies on external things being good. The store's open, the weather's nice, the bills are paid, whatever. Joy, though, is presented as an internal engine. It can operate even when circumstances aren't comfortable. The source really emphasizes that the fleeting nature of, say, leisure or consumption, it can never really replace the nourishing quality of genuine, internally sourced joy.
And we see this mechanism, this shift in focus, illustrated so well in the personal story, provided the story of Elder Jun from the Taiwan church.
Right, Elder Jun. He had apparently struggled for 7 long years with really extreme anxiety and depressive symptoms. 7 years kind of trapped in that broken spirit the proverb warns about, the one that dries up the bones. But his recovery didn't come from just waiting for the anxiety to magically lift or for his circumstances to change.
It came from service, didn't it? He shifted his focus entirely.
Precisely. He found new joy by moving into active service. He started writing articles every day, sharing his thoughts through recordings, podcasts. And notice the modern touch here. The source specifically mentions he used AI translation and broadcasting to reach a global audience. So his healing was directly linked to actively giving, contributing, connecting, replacing that self-absorption with outreach. This is like the practical outcome of discipline yielding joy.
That connection, the painful discipline leading to joyful service, that brings us pretty seamlessly to our final section. How wisdom in applying these things can prevent, well, catastrophic failure.
Yeah, if we broaden the scope now to wisdom in general, the sources remind us that parental guidance, or really any kind of wise mentorship, is critical. Why? Because the actions of the people being guided will eventually bring either deep joy or profound sorrow back to the guide, to the mentor. The fruit we bear really reflects the quality of the discipline we either accepted or rejected.
And to really hammer home the importance of maintaining that internal discipline, the material brings up one of the Bible's most cautionary figures, Samson.
Oh, Samson. Yeah, he's the ultimate tragic figure of wasted potential, isn't he? He was blessed with miraculous physical strength, born with this high calling dedicated as a Nazirite, which demanded absolute discipline about his physical habits. He was meant to be a symbol of separation, of dedication.
Yet all that incredible physical power couldn't make up for his lack of internal discipline, could it?
Not even close. The source material really highlights his fatal flaw. He just repeatedly indulged his fleeting desires. He kept breaking his Nazirite vows drinking, and crucially, choosing destructive relationships. He prioritized immediate, momentary gratification. That's the epitome of choosing happiness over enduring joy and purpose.
And the end result was just devastating, especially after he was deceived and betrayed by Delilah.
Total loss. That was the consequence. He lost his God-given strength, his eyes were gouged out, and he ended up dying alongside his enemies. Think about it. He was physically strong enough to tear down buildings, but too undisciplined to govern his own appetites. The ultimate lesson here is pretty stark. The kind of foundation you build through discipline, or maybe fail to build, determines the fruits you bear in life, joy or sorrow. Indulgence just erodes that foundation, like it did for Samson.
Okay, so if discipline is the painful process and joy is the intended harvest, what's the mechanism that keeps us on track, especially after we inevitably stumble?
Well, the core message seems to be that our pursuit of a corrected life path, the path that loving authorities like parents or coaches want for us, it needs an anchor. True faith, or maybe let's just call it genuine purpose, it requires two complementary states. On one hand, you need a contrite spirit, that painful acknowledgement of messing up.
The bitter part of the discipline again.
Exactly, and complementing that, you need a joyful, hopeful heart. The spirit admits the problem. The hopeful heart knows the correction is actually leading somewhere better.
That combination sounds like the path to maturity.
It is. The sources say the ultimate stability comes when you set the soul's anchor in hope. And this anchor isn't just wishful thinking. It's that deep inner conviction that allows you to accept difficult, bitter truth without letting it completely wreck your long-term goals or your self-worth. When that anchor is really set, you gain the resilience you need to overcome temptations, to find healing and forgiveness even after major stumbles. It's the mechanism that helps ensure the pain of discipline actually yields the peace of maturity.
That's a really powerful metaphor for resilience. The anchor lets you move beyond just, surviving today's problems. It keeps your gaze focused on long-term transformation, regardless of whether the department stores are open or, floods are happening around you.
Right, it allows that contrite spirit and the hopeful heart to actually coexist. And that moves you out of the superficial chase for temporary happiness and into the much harder but ultimately more rewarding work of finding deep joy.
So we encourage you to reflect on this distinction this week. Where might that ugly, bitter correction be necessary in your professional or personal life right now? And what harvest of peace could it potentially lead to? Are you perhaps chasing the fleeting happiness of Taichung, or maybe finding opportunities for the profound joy of service like in Hualien? Thank you for diving deep with us today.